All right, now that I've actually written down that lemonade idea that I've been thinking about for fucking God, it has to probably be like 2 or 3 months now. Maybe I'll actually go and buy the stuff tomorrow and just do it. Um, I actually had another idea I might add on to it, but I kind of want to just do the simple part first, and then maybe I can branch off. I want to show how to start with something simple and then just kind of build on it, because that's basically all modern science and all modern ideas are, is just built upon all these other ideas, and where some things have been resolved, some things haven't. So but I think I'll go ahead and say it now. But another thing I can control is, so right now I'm using just simply lemonade, so I'm using the lemonade as a constant. But what I can do is turn it into a variable and try different types of lemonade. And so that's another thing I could do, like a homebrew lemonade, or maybe like 3 different recipes of homebrew lemonade, and then a few store bought brands, and then just do a big ass experiment. So that's that. I'm really happy that I started that, because this is actually gonna be really fun, because I really like green tea lemonade, and it'll help with my coffee habit. Maybe I've definitely developed a coffee habit. Really freaking annoying. And now it's Orangensaft time. I still remember that word. Ah. Yeah, I need to find something to replace the Wheaties, because I'm tired of smoking this stuff. And I would really like to maybe get that bus driver route, get that CDL going, see if I can get some of those opportunities. So I thought it'd be really interesting to do my dialysis in a truck. But anywho, let's go ahead and hop here. So I'm going to do a Bible reading, because my brain is fried right now from the chemistry. I wanted to do 3, but it got me thinking about a lot of this stuff. And I cannot believe how little about the subject I got my degree in I understood. I mean, I get it, but still, though, it's crazy that I was tutoring and teaching, university, and everything. And people did well and stuff, but it's all because they just like memorize this stuff. I didn't actually teach them anything. So this is exciting. Now I'm starting to get a really good foundation on how the subject works. All right, let's get the Bible open. Let's actually close this guy. Okay. All right, that's low. That's saved. So then, Bible is. Let's go ahead. So it's going to be 2 Kings 12 to 20. Okay, JW Library. Bible. 2 Kings 12 to 20. In the 7th year of Jehu, Jehoash became king, and he reigned for 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah from Beersheba. Jehoash continued doing what was right in Jehovah's eyes all the days that Jehoiada, the priest, instructed him. However, the high places were not removed, and the people were still sacrificing and making sacrificial smoke on the high places. Jehoash said to the priests, "Take all the money that is brought to the house of Jehovah for the holy offerings, the money for which each one is assessed, the money given as an estimated value for a person, and all the money that each person's heart is moved to bring to the house of Jehovah. The priests will personally take it from their donors and use it to repair the house wherever any damage is found. By the 23rd year of King Jehoash, the priest had not yet repaired the damage to the house. So King Jehoash called Jehoiada the priest and the other priests and said to him, "Why are you not repairing the damage to the house? Therefore do not take any more money from your donors unless it is used to repair the house." At that, the priests agreed not to take any more money from the people and not to be responsible for repairing the house. Jehoiada the priest then took a chest and bored a hole in its lid and put it next to the altar on the right as one enters the house of Jehovah. That is where the priests who served as doorkeepers would put all the money that was brought into the house of Jehovah. Whenever they saw that there was a great deal of money in the chest, the secretary of the king and the high priest would come up and collect and count the money that had been brought to the house of Jehovah. They would give the money that had been counted to those appointed over the work being done in the house of Jehovah. They, in turn, paid it to the woodworkers and to the builders who were working at the house of Jehovah, as well as the masons and the stone cutters. They also brought timbers and hewn stones for repairing the damage to the house of Jehovah, and used the money for all the other expenses incurred in repairing the house. However, none of the money brought to the house of Jehovah was used to make basins of silver, extinguishers, bowls, trumpets, or any sort of gold or silver article for the house of Jehovah. They would give it only to those who did the work, and with it they repaired the house of Jehovah. They would not call for an accounting from the men to whom they gave the money to give to the workers, for they were trustworthy. However, the money for guilt offerings and the money for the sin offerings was not brought to the house of Jehovah. It belonged to the priests. It was then that Hazael, the king of Syria, went up to fight against Gath, and he captured it, after which he decided to attack Jerusalem. At that, King Jehoash of Judah took all the holy offerings that his forefathers Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, and Ahaziah, the kings of Judah, had sanctified, as well as his own holy offerings, and all the gold to be found in the treasuries of the house of Jehovah and the king's house, and sent them to Hazael, the king of Syria. So he withdrew from Jerusalem. As for the rest of the history of Jehoash, all that he did, it was not written in the book of the history of the times, or is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Judah? However, his servants joined in a conspiracy against him and struck Jehoash down at the house of the mound on the way that goes down to Silla. His servants, Josakhar, the son of Shimeath, and Jehozabad, the son of Shomer, were the ones who struck him and put him to death. They buried him with his forefathers in the city of David, and his son Amaziah became king in his place. Okay, 2 Kings 13. In the 23rd year of Jehoash, the son of Ahaziah, the king of Judah, Jehoahaz, the son of Jehu, became king over Israel in Samaria, and he reigned for 17 years. He continued to do what was bad in Jehovah's eyes, and he persisted in the sin that Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit. He did not turn away from it. So Jehovah's anger grew hot against Israel, and he gave them into the hand of King Hazael of Syria, and into the hand of Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael, all their days. In time, Jehoahaz begged for the favor of Jehovah, and Jehovah listened to him, for he had seen the oppression the king of Syria had inflicted on Israel. So Jehovah provided Israel with a savior to free them from Syria's grip, and the Israelites were able to dwell in their homes as before. However, they did not depart from the sin of the house of Jeroboam that had caused Israel to commit. They continued in his sin, and the sacred pole continued to stand in Samaria. Jehoahaz had left him with an army of only 50 horsemen, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers, because the king of Syria had destroyed them, trampling them like the dust at threshing time. As for the rest of the history of Jehoahaz, all that he did and his mightiness, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Israel? Then Jehoahaz was laid to rest with his forefathers, and they buried him in Samaria, and his son Jehoash became king to his place. In the 37th year of King Jehoash of Judah, Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, became king over Israel in Samaria, and he reigned for 16 years. He continued to do what was bad in Jehovah's eyes, not departing from all the sins that Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, had made Israel commit. He continued in these sins. As for the rest of the history of Jehoash, all that he did, and his mightiness, and how he fought against the king Amaziah of Judah, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of Israel, or the kings of Israel? Then Jehoash was laid to rest with his forefathers, and Jeroboam sat on the throne. And Jehoash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Now Elisha became ill with the sickness from which he eventually died. Jehoash, the king of Israel, came down to him and wept over him, saying, my father, the chariot of Israel and his horsemen. Elisha then said to him, take a bow and arrows. So he took a bow and arrows. Then he said to the king of Israel, put your hand to the bow. So he put his hand to it, after which Elisha laid his hands on the king's hands. Then he said, open the window toward the east. So he opened it. Elisha said, shoot. So he shot. He now said, Jehovah's arrow of victory, the arrow of victory over Syria. You will strike down Syria at Aphek until you finish it off. He continued, take the arrows, and he took them. Then he said to the king of Israel, strike the ground. So he struck the ground 3 times and stopped. At that the man of the true God grew indignant at him and said, you should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times. Sorry. Then you would have struck down Syria until you finished it off. But now you will strike down Syria only 3 times. After that, Elisha died and was buried. There were Moabite marauder bands that would come into the land at the beginning of the year. As some men were burying a man, they saw the marauder bands, so they quickly threw the man into Elisha's burial place and ran off. When the man touched the bones of Elisha, he came to life and stood on his feet. Now King Hazael of Syria oppressed Israel all the days of Jehoahaz. However, Jehovah extended favor and mercy to them and showed his concern for them for the sake of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he did not want to bring them to ruin. And he has not cast them away from his presence to this day. When King Hazael of Syria died, his son Ben-Hadad became king in his place. Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, then took back from Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael, the cities that he had taken in war from Jehoahaz, his father. 3 times Jehoash struck him down, and he recovered the cities of Israel. 2 Kings 14. In the 2nd year of Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, the king of Israel, Amaziah, the son of King Jehoash of Judah, became king. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoaddin of Jerusalem. He continued to do what was right in Jehovah's eyes, but not like David, his forefather. He did everything as Jehoash, his father, had done. However, the high places were not removed, and the people were still sacrificing and making sacrificial smoke on the high places. As soon as he had the kingdom firmly in his control, he struck down his servants, who had struck down his father, the king. But he did not put the sons of the murderers to death, in harmony with Jehovah's commandments written in the book of Moses, his law. Fathers should not be put to death for their sons, and sons should not be put to death for their fathers, but each one should be put to death for his own sin. He struck down the Edomites in the Valley of Salt, 10,000 men, and captured Selah in the war, and its name became Joktheel to this day. Then Amaziah sent messengers to Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, the king of Israel, saying, come, let us confront each other in battle. King Jehoash of Israel sent this message to King Amaziah of Judah. The thorny weed in Lebanon sent a message to the cedar in Lebanon. Give your daughter to my son as a wife. However, a wild beast of Lebanon passed by and trampled down the thorny weed. True, you have struck down Edom, so your heart has become arrogant. Enjoy your glory, but stay in your own house. Why should you provoke disaster and fall, bringing Judah down with you? But Amaziah did not listen. So King Jehoash of Israel went up, and he and King Amaziah of Judah confronted each other in battle at Bethshemesh, which belongs to Judah. Judah was defeated by Israel, so each one fled to his home. King Jehoash of Israel captured King Amaziah of Judah, son of Jehoash, son of Ahaziah, at Bethshemesh. When they came to Jerusalem, he made a breach in the wall of Jerusalem from the gate of Ephraim to the corner gate, 400 cubits. He took all the gold and the silver and all the articles that were found in the hostages of Jehovah and in the treasuries of the house of the king, as well as hostages. Then he returned to Samaria. As for the rest of the history of Jehoash, what he did and his mightiness, and how he fought against King Amaziah of Judah, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Israel? Then Jehoash was laid to rest with his forefathers and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel, and his son Jeroboam became king in his place. I need to replay the Witcher games and read the books. Just don't know why that just hit me right now, but that just totally hit me in the head. I just remember, I think the second game had to do with like the different kings. So I'm thinking that's something I need to read at some point. I also need to read actually, I think I'll make my first fiction set of books. I'm going to look it up real quick. Let's see. What's it called? Game of Thrones books. 96. Yeah, I'll have to look at that later. A Game of Thrones. Wikipedia. Okay. Anyhow, let's go back to JW. All right. In the 15th. Oh, hold on. I'm going to reread this. I don't remember if I read it or not, but Amaziah, the son of Jehoash, the king of Judah, lived for 15 years after the death of Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, the king of Israel. As for the rest of the history of Amaziah, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Judah? Later, a conspiracy was formed against him at Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. But they sent men after him at Lachish and put him to death there. So they carried him back on horses, and he was buried in Jerusalem with his forefathers in the city of David. Then all the people of Judah took Azariah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in place of his father Amaziah. He rebuilt Elath and restored it to Judah after the king was laid to rest with his forefathers. In the 15th year of Amaziah, the son of Jehoash, the king of Judah, Jeroboam, the son of King Jehoash of Israel, became king in Samaria, and he reigned for 41 years. He continued to do what was bad in Jehovah's eyes. He did not depart from all the sins that Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit. He restored the boundary of Israel from Lebohamath, clear to the sea of Arabah, according to the word that Jehovah, the God of Israel, spoke through his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet from Gathhepher. For Jehovah had seen the very bitter affliction of Israel. There was no one left to help Israel, not even the helpless or the weak. But Jehovah had promised not to wipe out the name of Israel from under the heavens. So he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, the son of Jehoash. As for the rest of the history of Jeroboam, all that he did and his mightiness, how he fought and how he restored Damascus and Hamath to Judah and Israel, is it not written in the book of history of the times of the kings of Israel? Then Jeroboam was laid to rest with his forefathers, with the kings of Israel, and his son Zechariah became king in his place. 2 Kings 15. In the 27th year of King Jeroboam of Israel, Azariah, the son of King Amaziah of Judah, became king. He was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jechaliah of Jerusalem. He continued to do what was right in Jehovah's eyes, just as his father Amaziah had done. However, the high places were not removed, and the people were still sacrificing and making sacrificial smoke on the high places. Jehovah afflicted the king, and he remained a leper until the day of his death, and he stayed in a separate house, while the king's son Jotham was in charge of the house, judging the people of the land. As for the rest of the history of Azariah, all that he did, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Judah? Then Azariah was laid to death with his forefathers, and they buried him with his forefathers in the city of David, and his son Jotham became king in his place. In the 38th year of King Azariah of Judah, Zechariah, the son of Jeroboam, became king over Israel and Samaria, and he reigned for 6 months. He did what was bad in Jehovah's eyes, just as his forefathers had done. He did not depart from the sins that Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit. Then Shallum, the son of Jabesh, conspired against him and struck him down at Ibleam. After putting him to death, he became king in his place. As for the rest of the history of Zechariah, it is written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Israel. That fulfilled Jehovah's word spoken to Jehu. 4 generations of your sons will sit on the throne of Israel, and that is how it happened. Shallum, the son of Jabesh, became king in the 39th year of King Uzziah of Judah, and he reigned for a full month in Samaria. Then Menahem, the son of Gadi, came up from Tirzah to Samaria and struck down Shallum, the son of Jabesh, in Samaria. After putting him to death, he became king in his place. As for the rest of the history of Shallum and the conspiracy that he formed, it is written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Israel. It was then that Menahem came from Tirzah and struck down Tifsah, and all who were in it and its territory, because it did not open its gates to him. He struck it down and ripped open its pregnant woman. In the 39th year of King Azariah of Judah, Menahem, the son of Gadi, became king over Israel, and he reigned for 10 years in Samaria. He continued to do what was bad in Jehovah's eyes. He did not depart from all the sins that Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit all his days. King Pul of Assyria came into the land, and Menahem gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver in return for his support in strengthening his hold on the kingdom. So Menahem raised the silver from Israel by exacting it from the prominent wealthy men. He gave the king of Assyria 50 silver shekels for each man. Then the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay in the land. As for the rest of the history of Menahem, all that he did, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Israel? Then Menahem was laid to rest with his forefathers, and his son Pekahiah became king in his place. In the 50th year of King Azariah of Judah, Pekahiah, the son of Menahem, became king over Israel and Samaria, and he reigned for 2 years. He continued to do what was bad in Jehovah's eyes. He did not depart from the sins that Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit. Then his adjutant, Pekah, the son of Remaliah, conspired against him and struck him down in Samaria in the fortified tower of the king's house, with Argob and Araiah. He had 50 men of Gilead with him, and after he put him to death, he became king in his place. As for the rest of the history of Pekahiah, all that he did, it is written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Israel. In the 52nd year of King Azariah of Judah, Pekah, the son of Remaliah, became king over Israel and Samaria, and he reigned for 20 years. He continued to do what was bad in Jehovah's eyes, and he did not depart from the sins that Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit. In the days of King Pekah of Israel, King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria invaded and captured Ijon, Abel Beth-Maacah, Genoa, Kadesh, Hazor, Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and he took the inhabitants into exile in Assyria. Then Hosea, the son of Elah, formed a conspiracy against Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and he struck him and put him to death. And he became king in his place in the 20th year of Jotham, the son of Uzziah. As for the rest of the history of Pekah, all that he did, it is written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Israel. In the 2nd year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, the king of Israel, Jotham, the son of King Uzziah of Judah, became king. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. He kept doing what was right in Jehovah's eyes, just as his father Uzziah had done. However, the high places were not removed, and the people were still sacrificing and making sacrificial smoke on the high places. He was the one who built the upper gate of the house of Jehovah. As for the rest of the history of Jotham, what he did, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Judah? In those days Jehovah began sending Rezin the king of Syria and Pekah the son of Remaliah against Judah. Then Jotham was laid to rest with his forefathers and was buried with his forefathers in the city of David his forefather. And his son Ahaz became king in his place. 2 Kings 16. In the 17th year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz, the son of King Jotham of Judah, became king. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 16 years in Jerusalem. He did not do what was right in the eyes of Jehovah his God, as David his forefather had done. Instead, he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, and he even made his own son pass through the fire, following the detestable practices of the nations that Jehovah had driven out from before the Israelites. He also kept sacrificing and making sacrificial smoke on the high places, on the hills, and under every luxuriant tree. It was then that King Rezin of Syria and Pekah, son of Remaliah, the king of Israel, came up to wage war against Jerusalem. They laid siege against Ahaz, but were not able to capture the city. At that time, King Rezin of Syria restored Elath to Edom, after which he drove the Jews out of Elath. And the Edomites entered Elath, and they have occupied it to this day. So Ahaz sent messengers to King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and save me from the hand of the king of Syria and the hand of the king of Israel, who are attacking me. Ahaz then took the silver and the gold that was to be found at the house of Jehovah and in the treasuries of the king's house, and sent the king of Assyria a bribe. The king of Assyria responded to his request, and he went up to Damascus and captured it, and led its people into exile to Kir, and he put Rezin to death. Then King Ahaz went to meet King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria at Damascus. When he saw that the altar was in Damascus, King Ahaz sent Urijah the priest a plan of the altar, showing its pattern and how it was made. Urijah the priest built an altar according to all the directions that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus. Urijah the priest finished building it before King Ahaz returned from Damascus. When the king returned from Damascus and saw the altar, he approached the altar and made offerings on it. And on the altar he continued to make his burnt offerings and his grain offerings smoke. He also poured out his drink offerings and sprinkled the blood of his communion sacrifices on it. Then he moved the copper altar that was before Jehovah from its place in front of the house, from between his own altar and the house of Jehovah, and he put it at the north side of his own altar. King Ahaz commanded Urijah, the priest, make the morning burnt offering smoke on the great altar. Also, the evening grain offering, the king's burnt offering, and his grain offering, as well as the burnt offerings, the grain offerings, and the drink offerings of all the people. You should also sprinkle on it all the blood of the burnt offerings and all the blood of the other sacrifices. As for the copper altar, let me decide what to do with it. And Urijah the priest did everything that King Ahaz had commanded. Furthermore, King Ahaz cut the side panels of his carriages into pieces and removed the basins from them. And he took the sea down off the copper bowls that supported it and put it on a stone pavement. And the covered structure for the Sabbath that had been built in the house of the king's outer entryway, he shifted away from the house of Jehovah. He did so because of the king of Assyria. As for the rest of the history of Ahaz, what he did, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Judah? Then Ahaz was laid to rest with his forefathers and was buried with his forefathers in the city of David, and his son Hezekiah became king in his place. Okay, 2 Kings 17. In the 12th year of King Ahaz of Judah, Hosea, the son of Elah, became king over Israel in Samaria. He ruled for 9 years. He continued to do what was bad in Jehovah's eyes, only not to the extent of the kings of Israel prior to him. King Shalmaneser of Assyria came up against him, and Hosea became his servant and began to pay tribute to him. However, the king of Assyria learned that Hosea was involved in a conspiracy, for he had sent messengers to King So of Egypt, and did not bring the tribute up to the king of Assyria as in former years. Therefore, the king of Assyria kept him confined and bound in prison. The king of Assyria invaded the entire land, and he came to Samaria and laid siege to it for 3 years. In the 9th year of Hosea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria. He then led the people of Israel into exile in Assyria and made them dwell in Halah and in Habor at the river Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. This happened because the people of Israel had sinned against Jehovah their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, from under the control of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. They worshipped other gods. They followed the customs of the nations that Jehovah had driven out from before the Israelites, and they followed the customs that the kings of Israel had established. The Israelites were pursuing the things that were not right according to Jehovah their God. They kept building high places in all their cities, from watchtower to fortified city. They kept setting up for themselves sacred pillars and sacred poles on every high hill and under every luxuriant tree. And on all the high places they would make the sacrificial smoke, just as the nations did that Jehovah had driven into exile from before them. They kept doing wicked things to offend Jehovah. They continued to serve disgusting idols about which Jehovah had told them, "You must not do this." Jehovah kept warning Israel and Judah through all his prophets and every visionary, saying, "Turn back from your wicked ways. Keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law that I commanded your forefathers and that I sent to you through my servants the prophets." But they did not listen, and they remained just as stubborn as their forefathers, who had not shown faith in Jehovah their God. They continued rejecting his regulations and his covenant that he had made with their forefathers and his reminders that he had given to warn them. And they kept following worthless idols and became worthless themselves, imitating the nations all around them that Jehovah had commanded them not to imitate. They kept leaving all the commandments of Jehovah their God, and they made metal statues of 2 calves and a sacred pole. And they bowed down to all the army of the heavens and served Baal. They also made their sons and their daughters pass through the fire. They practiced divination and looked for omens, and they kept devoting themselves to do what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah to offend them. So Jehovah was very angry with Israel, so that he removed them from his sight. He did not let any remain but the tribe of Judah alone. Even Judah did not keep the commandments of Jehovah their God. They also walked in the customs that Israel followed. Jehovah rejected all the descendants of Israel and humiliated them and gave them into the hands of plunderers until he had cast them away from before him. He ripped Israel away from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. But Jeroboam caused Israel to stray from following Jehovah, and he caused them to commit a great sin. And the people of Israel kept walking in all the sins that Jeroboam had committed. They did not depart from them until Jehovah removed Israel from his sight, just as he had declared through all his servants, the prophets. So Israel was taken into exile from its land to Assyria, where they remain to this day. The king of Assyria then brought people from Babylon, Cutha, Ava, Hamath, and Sepharvaim, and settled them in the cities of Samaria in place of the Israelites. They took possession of Samaria and lived in its cities. When they first went dwelling there, they did not fear Jehovah. So Jehovah sent lions among them, and they killed some of the people. It was reported to the king of Assyria, "The nations that you have taken into exile and resettled in the cities of Samaria do not know the religion of the God of the land. So he keeps sending lions among them, which are putting them to death, because none of them know the religion of the God of the land." At that the king of Assyria commanded, "Have each one of the priests whom you took into exile from there return to live there and to teach them the religion of the God of the land." So one of the priests whom they had taken into exile from Samaria came back to live in Bethel, and he began to teach them how they should fear Jehovah. However, each different nation made their own god, which they placed in the houses of worship on the high places that the Samaritans had made. Each different nation did so in their cities where they were living. So the men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth, the men of Cuth made Nergal, the men of Hamath made Ashima, and the Evites made Nibhaz and Tartak. The Sepharvites would burn their sons in the fire to Adremelech and Anemelech, the gods of Sepharvaim. Although they feared Jehovah, they appointed priests for the high places from the people in general, and these officiated for them at the houses of worship on the high places. Thus they feared Jehovah, but they worshipped their own gods according to the religion of the nations from which they had been deported. To this day they follow their former religions. None of them worship Jehovah, and none follow his statutes, his judgments, the law, and the commandment that Jehovah gave the sons of Jacob, whose name he changed to Israel. When Jehovah made a covenant with them, he commanded them, "You must not fear other gods, and you must not bow down to them or serve them or sacrifice to them. But Jehovah, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt with great power and an outstretched arm, is the one you should fear, and to him you should bow down, and to him you should sacrifice. and the regulations, the judgments, the law, and the commandment that he wrote for you, you should always follow carefully. And you must not fear other gods, and you must not forget the covenant I made with you, and you must not fear other gods. But it is Jehovah your God whom you should fear, and he is the one who will rescue you out of the hand of all your enemies. But they did not obey, and they followed their former religion. So these nations came to fear Jehovah, but they were also serving their own graven images. Both their sons and their grandsons have done just as their forefathers did down to this day. 2 Kings 18. In the 3rd year of Hosea, the son of Elah, the king of Israel, Hezekiah, the son of King Ahaz of Judah, became king. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. He kept doing what was right in Jehovah's eyes, just as David his forefathers had done. He was the one who removed the high places, smashed the sacred pillars, and cut down the sacred pole. He also crushed the copper serpent that Moses had made, for down to that time the people of Israel had been making sacrificial smoke to it, and it used to be called the copper serpent idol. He trusted in Jehovah, the God of Israel. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah after him, nor among those prior to him. He held fast to Jehovah. He did not turn away from following him. He continued to keep the commandments that Jehovah had given to Moses, and Jehovah was with him. Wherever he went, he acted wisely. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and refused to serve him. He also defeated the Philistines, clear to Gaza and its territories, from watchtower to fortified city. In the 4th year of King Hezekiah, that is, the 7th year of Hosea, the son of Elah, the king of Israel, King Shalmaneser of Syria came up against Samaria and began to lay siege to it. They captured it at the end of 3 years. In the 6th year of Hezekiah, which was the 9th year of King Hosea of Israel, Samaria was captured. Then the king of Assyria took Israel into exile in Assyria and settled them in Halah and in Habor at the river Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. This was because they had not listened to the voice of Jehovah their God, but kept violating his covenant. All that Moses, the servant of Jehovah, had commanded, they neither listened nor obeyed. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. So King Hezekiah of Judah sent word to the king of Assyria at Lachish, I am at fault. Withdraw from against me, and I will give you whatever you may impose on me. The king of Assyria imposed on King Hezekiah of Judah a fine of 300 silver talents and 30 gold talents. So Hezekiah gave all the silver that could be found at the house of Jehovah and the treasuries of the king's house. At that time Hezekiah removed the doors of the temple of Jehovah at the doorposts that King Hezekiah of Judah himself had overlaid, and he gave them to the king of Assyria. The king of Assyria then sent to the Tartan, the Rabsaris, and the Rabshakeh with the vast army from Lachish to King Hezekiah in Jerusalem. They went up to Jerusalem and took a position by the conduit of the upper pool, which is at the highway of the laundryman's field. When they called for the king to come out, Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, who was in charge of the household, Shebna, the secretary, and Joah, son of Asaph, the recorder, came out to them. So the Rabshakeh said to them, Please say to Hezekiah, This is what the great king, the king of Assyria, says. What is the basis for your confidence? You are saying, I have a strategy and the power to wage war, but these are empty words. In whom have you put your trust, so that you dared to rebel against me? Look, you trust in the support of this crushed reed, Egypt, which, if a man should lean on it, would enter into the palm and pierce it. That is the way Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is to all those who trust in him. And if you should say to me, We trust in Jehovah our God, is he not the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed? Well, he says to Judah and Jerusalem, You should bow down before this altar in Jerusalem. Now make this wager. Please, with my lord the king of Assyria, I will give you 2,000 horses if you are able to find enough riders for them. How then could you drive back even one governor who is the least of my lord's servants, while you put your trust in Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Now is it without authorization from Jehovah that I have come against this place to destroy it? Jehovah himself said to me, Go up against this land and destroy it. At this Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, and Shebna, and Joah said to Rabshakeh, Speak to your servants, please, in the Aramaic language, for we can understand it. Do not speak to us in the language of the Jews, in the hearing of the people on the wall. But the Rabshakeh said to them, Is it also your lord, is it just to your Lord and to you that my Lord sent me to speak these words? Is it not also the men who sit on the wall, those who will eat their own excrement and drink their own urine along with you? Then the Rabshakeh stood and called out loudly in the language of the Jews, saying, Hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. This is what the king says. Do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he is not able to rescue you out of my hand. And do not let Hezekiah cause you to trust in Jehovah by saying, Jehovah will surely rescue us. Rescue and secure are the same letters. And this city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for this is what the king of Assyria says. Make peace with me and surrender, and each of you will eat from his own vine and from his own fig tree, and will drink the water of his own cistern, until I come and take you to a land like your own land, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive trees and honey. Then you will live and not die. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for he misleads you by saying, Jehovah will rescue us. Have any of the gods of the nations rescued their lands out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Iva? Have they rescued Samaria out of my hand? Who among all the gods of the lands have rescued their land out of my hand, so that Jehovah should rescue Jerusalem out of my hand? But the people kept silent and did not say a word to him in reply, for the order of the king was, We must not answer him. But Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, who was in charge of the household, Shebna the secretary, and Joah the son of Asaph the reporter came to Hezekiah with their garments ripped apart and told him the words of the Rabshakeh. 2 Kings 19. As soon as King Hezekiah heard this, he ripped his garments apart and covered himself with sackcloth and went into the house of Jehovah. Then he sent Eliakim, who was in charge of the household, Shebna the secretary, and the elders of the priests covered with sackcloth, to the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amoz. They said to him, This is what Hezekiah says. This day is a day of distress, of rebuke, and of disgrace for the children who are ready to be born, but there is no strength to give birth. Perhaps Jehovah your God will hear all the words of the Rabshakeh, whom the king of Assyria his lord sent to taunt the living God, and he will call him to account for the words that Jehovah your God has heard. So offer up a prayer in behalf of the remnant who have survived. So the servant of King Hezekiah went into Isaiah, and Isaiah said to them, This is what you should say to your Lord. This is what Jehovah says. Do not be afraid, because of the words that you have heard. The words with which the attendants of the king of Assyria blasphemed me. Here I am putting a thought in his mind, and he will hear a report and return to his own land, and I will make him fall by the sword in his own land. After the Rabshakeh heard that the king of Assyria had pulled away from Lachish, he returned to him and found him fighting against Libnah. Now the king heard it was said about King Tirhakah of Ethiopia, Here he has come out to fight against you. So he sent messengers again to Hezekiah, saying, This is what you should say to King Hezekiah of Judah. Do not let your God, in whom you trust, deceive you by saying, Jerusalem will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Look, you have heard what the king of Assyria did to all the lands by devoting them to destruction. Will you alone be rescued? Did the gods of the nations that my forefathers destroyed rescue them? Where are Gozan, Haran, Rezeph, and the people of Eden who were in Telasar? Where is the king of Hamath, the king of Arpad, the king of the cities of the Sepharvaim, and of Hena and of Iva? Hezekiah took up the letters out of the hand of the messengers and read them. Hezekiah then went to the house of Jehovah and spread them out before Jehovah. And Hezekiah began to pray before Jehovah and say, O Jehovah, the God of Israel, sitting enthroned above the cherubs, you alone are the true God of the kingdoms of the earth. You made the heavens of the earth and the earth. Incline your ear, O Jehovah, and hear. Open your eyes, O Jehovah, and see. Hear the words that Sennacherib has sent to taunt the living God. It is a fact, O Jehovah, that the kings of Assyria have devastated the nations and their lands, and they have thrown their gods into the fire, because they were not gods, but the work of human hands. Wood and stone. That is why they could destroy them. But now, O Jehovah, our God, please save us out of his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone are God, O Jehovah. Isaiah son of Amos sent this message to Hezekiah. This is what Jehovah the God of Israel says. I have heard your prayer to me concerning King Sennacherib of Assyria. This is the word Jehovah has spoken against him. The virgin daughter of Zion despises you. She scoffs at you. The daughter of Jerusalem shakes her head at you. Whom have you taunted and blasphemed? Against whom have you raised your voice and lifted your arrogant eyes? It is against the Holy One of Israel. Through your messages you have taunted Jehovah and said, with the multitude of my war chariots I will ascend the heights of mountains, the remotest parts of Lebanon. I will cut down its lofty cedars, its choice juniper trees. I will enter its farthest retreats, its densest forests. I will dig wells and drink foreign waters. I will dry up all the streams of Egypt with the soles of my feet. Have you not heard? From long ago it was determined, from days gone I have prepared it. Now I will bring it about. You will turn fortified cities into desolate piles of ruin. Their inhabitants will be helpless. They will be terrified and put to shame. They will become as vegetation of the field and green grass, as grass of the roofs that is scorched by the east wind. But I well know that when you sit, when you go out, when you come in, and when you are enraged against me. Because your rage against me and your roaring have reached my ears, so I will put my hook in your nose and my bridle between your lips, and I will lead you back the way you came. And this will be the sign for you. This year you will eat what grows on its own, and in the second year you will eat grain that sprouts from that. But in the third year you will sow seed and reap, and you will plant vineyards and eat their fruitage. Those of the household of Judah who escape, those who are left, will take root downward and produce fruit upward. For a remnant will go out of Jerusalem and survivors from Zion. The zeal of Jehovah of armies will do this. Therefore, this is what Jehovah says about the king of Assyria. He will not come into the city, or shoot an arrow there, or confront it with a shield, or cast up a siege rampart against it. By the way he came, he will return. He will not come into the city, declares Jehovah. I will defend the city and save it for my own sake, and for the sake of my servant David. On that very night, the angel of Jehovah went out and struck down 185,000 men in the camp of the Assyrians. When people rose up early in the morning, they saw all the dead bodies. So King Sennacherib of Assyria departed and returned to Nineveh and stayed there. And as he was bowing down at the houses of his god Nisroch, his own sons Adramelech and Sharezer struck him down with the sword, and then escaped to the land of Ararat. And his son Esarhaddon became king in his place. Okay. And 2 Kings 20. In those days Hezekiah became sick and was at the point of death. The prophet Isaiah, the son of Amos, came and said to him, This is what Jehovah says. Give instructions to your household, for you will die. You will not recover. At that he turned his face to the wall and began to pray to Jehovah. I beg you, O Jehovah, remember, please, how I have walked before you faithfully and with a complete heart, and I have done what was good in your eyes. And Hezekiah began to weep profusely. Isaiah had not yet gone out to the middle courtyard when Jehovah's word came to him, saying, Go back and say to Hezekiah, the leader of my people, This is what Jehovah the God David your forefather says. I have heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. Here I am healing you. On the third day, you will go up to the house of Jehovah. I will add 15 years to your life, and I will rescue you and the city out of the hands of the king of Assyria. And I will defend the city for my own sake and for the sake of David my servant. Isaiah then said, Bring a cake of pressed dried figs. So they brought it and applied it to the boil, after which he gradually recovered. Hezekiah had asked Isaiah, What is the sign to show that Jehovah will heal me and that I will go up on the third day to the house of Jehovah? Isaiah replied, This is the sign from Jehovah to show you that Jehovah will carry you out of the word that he has spoken. Carry out the word he has spoken. Do you want the shadow on the stairway to move forward 10 steps or back 10 steps? Hezekiah said, It is an easy thing for the shadow to extend itself 10 steps, but not to go back 10 steps. So Isaiah the prophet called out to Jehovah, and he made the shadow on the stairway of Ahaz go back 10 steps after it had already descended the steps. At that time, the king of Babylon, Berodach-Baladan, son of Baladan, sent letters and a gift to Hezekiah, for he had heard that Hezekiah had been sick. Hezekiah welcomed them and showed his entire treasure house. the silver, the gold, the balsam oil, and other precious oil, his armory, and everything that was to be found in his treasuries. There was nothing that Hezekiah did not show them in his own house, and in all his dominion. After that, Isaiah the prophet came in to King Hezekiah and asked him, "What did these men say, and where did they come from?" So Hezekiah said, "These came from a distant land, from Babylon." Next he asked, "What did they see in your house?" Hezekiah replied, "They saw everything in my house. There was nothing that I did not show them in my treasuries." Isaiah now said to Hezekiah, "Hear the word of Jehovah. Look, days are coming, and all that is in your house, and all that your forefathers have stored up to this day will be carried off to Babylon. Nothing will be left, says Jehovah. And some of your own sons, to whom you will become father, will be taken, and will become court officials in the palace of the king of Babylon." At that, Hezekiah said to Isaiah, "The word of Jehovah that you have spoken is good." Then he added, "It is good if will be peace and stability during my lifetime." As for the rest of the history of Hezekiah, all his mightiness is how he made the pool and the conduit and brought the water into the city. Is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the king of Judah? Then Hezekiah was laid to rest with his forefathers, and his son Manasseh became king in this place. End of AV 37.